Hello and welcome to a new hockey show here on 88.1 FM WLRA The Start, Lewis University's official radio station. This is the Dump and Chase hockey podcast, which is what we're calling it. I'm Reed Poland, joined by Rebecca McManus and Jake Sadowski. How's everyone doing today?
We are doing fine. Thank you so much, Reed.
Doing fine. That's great to hear. Rebecca, how are you?
I'm good.
You're good.
We're doing fine. So, yeah, this is a nice hockey podcast that we're doing that we are deciding to do for many purposes. All three of us are big hockey fans. We all each have different favorite teams, surprisingly enough. So it only makes sense for us three big fans of each teams to just conglomerate and just talk about every other team that we're not favorites of.
Yep.
So,
all right. Jake, what are we talking about today? You have a little bit of a game plan for this.
So, yeah, a little
What do we got?
bit. So, in the beginning, we want to do a little bit of, like, news recaps. We want to do some previews, especially during the season. It won't be as much of a beginning segment for now since the season is starting to come up. Only preseason's only starting to come up. But we'll find more headlines as the season goes on. So, right now, we're kind of previewing what all the stuff that's going on in the hockey world is going to come up. But since we're not in season yet, we might as well go some during the fun route and find some fun stories to talk about too. And we already found one with the Ovechkins and Washington Capitals.
The OVOs, yes.
The OVOs. Boy, oh boy.
What do you got on that, Jake? Fill us in on the OVOs.
I got the article right here.
Rebecca's got it.
I don't even know what you have to say to that. Like, what is it? Is this like a what kind of cereal is this? First of all,
The article says it's a honey nut cereal. It's starting to be available September 17th, which is Ovi's birthday, and it's only while supplies last.
So get out and get your OVOs before they run out.
So it's like a Cheerios kind of knockoff.
That's
based
what
on
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Ovechkin,
I assume this is only for the Washington area as well.
Yeah,
That's what I would think.
Sense.
They're coming to Giant.
That's weird.
I don't know.
But I mean, like at
they
the
go
same
for a
time,
good cause though.
That's
they go
true.
to a children's
Maryland
cancer
based-
foundation.
Yeah.
I was
That's
thinking
pretty
it was
cool.
like a good marketing tool for like the Capitals because it would also like be a good marketing tool for anybody else that's not a Capitals fan. Just to have Ovechkin's face plastered on something else.
That's true. Exactly. Yeah, I know that. I don't know. It's kind of cool
But
that
surprisingly, it's like
we're going into cereal now.
Ovechkin is also like one of those players that's very popular outside of the States. So it's
That's
like,
true. Yeah.
if like I have talked to some people that don't reside here, that the only players that they usually know around in the United States that play hockey is either Alexander Ovechkin, Pavel Datsyuk, the international guys like that.
Sure.
So
the big guys from Europe.
Yeah.
that
So
have come into the league.
if there's anybody that wants to be a poster boy for the NHL, it might as well be Ovechkin.
That's true. Yeah. I like it. I don't know. I'd be curious to try it. I don't
Me
know.
too.
$2.69 for a box.
I'd probably
That's not bad.
I'd probably just buy it just because it has Ovechkin's face on it too. So
There you go.
there you go.
Get your OVOs.
Yeah.
What a way to start the show, talking about cereal. This is exactly how we all saw it going, didn't we?
Exactly.
Start every show like this. Just talking about different
Exactly.
cereals.
Actually,
Yeah.
we could do that. We could totally start a show with just the random story that we find that's just hockey related, and we just have a lot of fun with it.
I kind of like that. All right. Let's talk about other NHL news.
So there's actually a preview story that I found on how most of the teams that are must-watch teams that will rebound this season. So there's a couple of teams out there. Florida Panthers is one of them because they got huge off-season trades and whatnot. Tampa Bay Lightning, obviously, that's a big one because not getting knocked out in the first round of the playoffs is huge.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
When you were pretty much breaking records during the regular season, so
Yeah.
definitely that's going to have to be a rebound year for them. So that's another thing there. But then you have also the New Jersey Devils, who we'll talk about them more in depth when we get to them when we do the Atlantic Division in our next show. But getting PK Subban, getting their draft pick and Jack Hughes, they have two first-line centers from two separate drafts in only the past 3 years. And they're their top two centers
They're
now.
looking solid.
So, and then they get PK Subban, which is their top defenseman now. And my goodness, the only question would be their goaltending at this point. So they're looking hot too. So I would expect them to. Their expectation with this season would probably have to be to make the playoffs too. So
Sure. Other news, Justin Williams, Hurricanes captain, stepping away from the NHL. I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. Says that he's unsure of aspirations with regards to hockey.
So yeah, Justin Williams is a really great player. He's not he's not gonna be like one of the best that people will say, but he's just one of those solid players that was a very good, solid second line, third line center that was used in most situations. I mean, he has done everything in his career, to be honest. So I kind of felt that he didn't really need to step out. I figured he could have just signed a contract with either, I don't know, the Kings, the Canes, and just would have retired that way, because that's actually what Cam Ward did not too long ago.
He had a decent season last year. He had 53 points.
He won them the round. He won them the playoff round.
Second in Carolina with 23 goals.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's been falling off skill level wise. He's still seemingly performing well. So
and again,
decision.
He was the game-winning. He had the game-winning goal for their Game 7. I think it was Game 7 against the Washington Capitals.
Sure.
So he was clutch for them in the playoffs too.
Yeah.
So I feel like he's done so much for the teams he's been on, and he's won a couple of rings already. So I feel like he could have just happily retired then, but. As a 37-year-old, I guess he's kind of being the Jaromir Jagr of this generation.
Exactly,
trying to keep playing.
Trying to bring it back. Speaking of retiring, Nicholas Kronwall has retired, and he will be staying with the Wings as the advisor to the GM. Played for 15 seasons with Detroit. So he had a good career. I remember he was one of the main guys on Detroit growing up back when they had Datsuk and kind of their glory years back in the late 2000s when they won the Cup in 2008,
Yeah. And that was also the whole, getting Kronwall was a big thing back in his day too. Yep. So he was the pinnacle of the big physical defenseman that you didn't want to get hit by. So he would kind of have the Zdeno Chara effect, where he was kind of like the Chara of the Red Wings. So he was a very big physical presence that no team wanted to face. But it's great for him to retire on this note, because now he goes to be an advisor to the GM, who is already Steve Yzerman, ironically.
Yep.
So that's a great duo, because he also played with Steve Yzerman for kind of a short time as well, because Steve Yzerman during that time was at the end of his career. So having those two in the front office is a really, really deadly duo for the Red Wings, and they're rebuilding. So I feel like that's a great two guys to really rebuild your franchise around.
I was going to say the Red Wings have kind of been in this rebuilding period for a little bit now, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for about 3 seasons, I want to say. I think they missed the playoffs 3 times.
I was going to say, ever since their playoff streak ended, they've kind of been working to get back to the form they were, 10 years ago.
Yeah, and then they've lost a lot of guys that really were, kind of getting old. I mean, there was Henrik Zetterberg was also already getting old. Then he had that injury and all the conditions that he was going through, so he had to retire.
Yep.
So, but I think the Red Wings just try to keep during that time. We're trying to keep with the formula that they were trying to still have seasoned veterans playing for them.
I think the thing with the Red Wings is they're trying to find the players that can replace Datsuk and Zetterberg in those leadership roles, and kind of being the staple players of their team, when they really had those 2 or 3 guys that everyone knew from the Red Wings when it seemed like there was the big clash with Pittsburgh between those 2 teams, in the playoffs and stuff. I think they're trying to refine that identity, and I think once they find that, they'll hopefully return back to playoff form, because they were a fun team to watch back then.
Yeah, and they're already starting to do that with Dylan Larkin and Andres Athanasiou. Those are your 2 big guys when it comes to the Detroit Red Wings, so they're starting to rebuild from that. But I think a few drafts later, there'll be findings more of their franchise players in the seasons to come.
Yep.
So we also will have we were actually going to go into Detroit deep dive a little bit more later when we get to the Atlantic Division, but we're going to also go through later in the show, go through the entire Metropolitan Division, and we're going to be going through each team and kind of predicting where they will end up in the season, whether they're playoff bound or not, and we'll be going through all of that as well. So that's going to be a big thing too. But we've kind of already touched on the Detroit Red Wings, which they're in the Atlantic Division, so we'll go through that in the next show when we go through the Atlantic Division there. But we're going to be focusing on the Metropolitan Division as well in this show later on.
What other news do we have for the league? Let's talk about jerseys for a little bit. A little bit different than players.
Oh, yeah.
There's been a lot of jersey announcements.
You're just waiting for the gold Vegas
I am
jersey.
waiting for the Vegas Golden Knights third jersey, which will hopefully be gold. But we have the Kings coming out with their heritage jerseys. Buffalo releasing a new jersey. Carolina finally
getting better away jerseys.
has a better away jersey that hopefully their front office will actually want them to wear, so they just aren't wearing their red and black jerseys constantly. I kind of like the direction that these teams are going. The throwback ones should be interesting to see, bringing back the so-called heritage jerseys, especially for the Kings, because these were the jerseys when Gretzky was on the team in the late 80s.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the classic white with the silver, very, very sharp look. So I'm glad to see that those are coming back. And Buffalo, I kind of like their heritage ones that they're doing, I guess you could say. Those look cool with the gold logo. I like those.
Yeah, I like the gold one too. I kind of like a lot of jerseys that are gold, just not for every team, obviously, but the Golden Knights for golden jerseys.
Gold is a difficult
sense.
color to do because you can either really butcher it or you can do it right. And I think Buffalo did good with this one. I like it.
Yeah, it's obviously because if you already have gold, partially gold on your team logo already, it kind of makes more sense to do that.
Yep. All right.
But also, I think the Maple Leafs they kind of changed their jerseys after a while when they found out. They went back to their heritage thing too, when their logo was like a flat maple leaf, which was terrible.
That's right. Yes,
that.
I forgot about that.
That was a
those are really boring. Yeah,
those are really boring. So they went back to their heritage that was like back in I think that began during the 1950s.
Sure.
So they kept the same logo throughout the entire time.
Yep.
So that's really cool too. And then they changed their jerseys the season after to kind of mold themselves after that too. So seeing other teams do the same thing, kind of like to show their heritage for their team, is really kind of cool too.
Yep. All right. Well, I think take a little break, come back, talk about the Metropolitan Division, go through our picks for teams like those, see where they're going to rank up.
And I think that will take us a while. Anyway.
I think that will, yeah.
It's 8 teams per division, so it will be quite a while.
Yep, there's going to be a bit to cover with those. So we're going to be back on 88.1. This is the Dump and Chase radio show / podcast. Gonna have to figure it out, but we will. It's a rough start, but we'll get there. It's
our first show.
Yep, we're going to get back to the music for a little bit. Short break, and we will be back with more hockey news right after this. Welcome back to the Dump and Chase podcast on 88.1 FM WLRA. The Start, Lewis University, Romeoville, Illinois. Reid, Poland, joined by Rebecca and Jake. And before the break, we talked about some rundown of NHL news, just general news. And now we're going to take a deep dive into the Metropolitan Division. Go through kind of a review of last season and go into our predictions for next season. And Jake, you want to start us off?
Yeah. So actually, before that, we do have a thing on Seattle because we wanted to talk about the Seattle franchise a little bit before we get into that. So Seattle franchise is coming in the 2020 to 2021 season. And
2021 to 2022.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. They're going to name the team in 2020. I got mixed up on that one.
I don't know.
That's news to me.
Yeah. And apparently in early 2020, they're going to name what the team name is. And according to the NHL article I'm reading right now, and they have they say that there's a process on how to name the team, which is what I'm reading as well. And also, actually, what Reid is actually showing us now is the jerseys that also how they look for Seattle, and they look pretty awesome.
Those are pretty cool
too. The green for
I hope
home,
they go with green because really the only green team we have is Dallas, right?
I mean that's true. Also, the Seattle Seahawks of the NFL also wear green, so I mean Seattle's kind of
that's true.
Green
Are they under the same ownership or is it different ownership?
I'm not sure actually.
Let's find out.
I would find that out first.
Oh, nope. They're owned by the Seattle Hockey Partners.
Oh.
Okay.
I figured. I mean, NHL and NFL partnerships aren't really that great, but so yeah, the Seattle franchise coming very soon. The team is going to come in 2020, and Ron Francis is their GM.
I was going to say, they announced that recently, correct?
Yeah, they recently just announced him as the GM, so that's a really good start for a franchise to be led under him.
Yep.
So that's a huge one too. And they actually first, if for anybody that didn't know this, the Seattle team actually was an NHL team a very long time ago, back in the 1920s. They were known as the Seattle Metropolitans. And back then, their jerseys were a little bit similar to the Ottawa Senators because they had those lines in the middle. But they weren't that great, but it's kind of like what you expect in the early 1900s.
I feel like every jersey 100 years ago was just a lot of stripes with the
yeah,
letter
it was
slap
just a
on
lot
the
of
front.
stripes. Yeah, that's true. But the Seattle team wasn't really, it didn't last long. The franchise I think it only lasted about 5 years or so. But surprisingly, they actually did win they did win a championship when there was about, I want to say 8 teams during that time. That was not part of the NHL at that time. It was the predecessor, the preceded from that league. But they did win a championship, but they only lasted about 5 different seasons. So
Got it.
it didn't last long, unfortunately. But they're coming back. It took them about almost 100 years, but they're coming back.
Let's see some. I found an article. The ownership group of the team has registered trademarks for 13 potential names. They are the Cougars, the Eagles, the Emeralds, the Evergreens, the Firebirds, the Kraken, the Rainiers, the Renegades, the Sea Lions, the Seals, the Sockeyes, the Totems, and the Whales.
Ooh.
The one that really sticks out to me is the Kraken. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw a picture
The Seattle
online
Kraken.
of a jersey, like a tees jersey if they were called the Kraken. It looked really cool.
I think the Kraken is that's a nice name.
I say you go with that.
Yeah.
I think we go with the Kraken. I think we just decided for the ownership group, just go with the Kraken.
We made it easy.
Make it easy, yeah. Hopefully they're listening. They're the Kraken.
I feel like Seattle's just going to name a team based on an animal or a fictional animal, no matter what, anyway. So might as well call it a Kraken.
I think it should be the Kraken. That would be pretty cool.
All right, so now with that done, now we can jump into the Metropolitan Division and see what we have here. So we're starting off first with the Devils. What do you guys think of the Devils? I know we kind of jumped around a bit earlier, saying how the Devils were a completely changed team. Steelman's on the first defensive line. Jack Hughes is the second center. Nico Hischier is the first center. And actually, I do have the projected lineups as well. So they really turned this franchise around in just one offseason. It was kind of a disappointing last season too, because they really were kind of like favorites to at least go in a wild card spot, and they were okay for the first 20 games of the season, and then when Taylor Hall went down, it kind of went downhill from there, and they couldn't really rebound after that.
The end of the season, 31, 41, and 10 with 72 points. They were last in the division.
So that was kind of like a classic, 75 to 85 point team that was going to either finish even or not finish well enough to go to the playoffs. And fortunately, they were last in the Metropolitan.
Yeah, they were nowhere close, really. We'll get to the other teams last year, but looking at the standings, Columbus made the playoffs with 98 points. The next team was the Flyers with 82.
And plus, Columbus actually was really close coming out of that, because the last game they had in the regular season, they won it in a shootout, and that's what had them get in. And obviously, because of that, there was not a lot of hype for that team going into the playoffs, and then all of a sudden they do a 4-0 shutout against the Lightning. So they made a huge impact in the playoffs. It was just unfortunate that they lost to the Bruins after that, but it was no shame on them because they really made a statement going into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, once we get there, they're not. I don't think they're going to be the same team as they were going to be last year, but that's for a different time.
Yep.
So the Devils, their offseason moves, their key arrivals I have with me is not only getting P.K. Subban and Jack Hughes, but they also did get Wayne Simmons from Philadelphia.
About Wayne Simmons, that's right, yeah.
So now with that, but they did lose Steven Santini on D and Curtis Gabriel, which is a plug-in fourth liner. But now with this, their projected lineups, this is kind of I can't even believe I'm reading these lineups right now. First line, Nico Hischier, Taylor Hall, and Kyle Palmieri is your first line. Second line, Jack Hughes, Nikita Gusev, and Wayne Simmons. So that's already a great two great first two lines.
They got Gusev too.
Yeah, they got Gusev, and he's already getting plugged into the second line. That's incredible.
Yeah, people are making it seem like he's the second coming, so we'll have to see how he performs.
Yeah, maybe.
Because he hasn't seen NHL ice time yet, but...
Yeah, that's true. And then third line is Travis Zajac, which kind of sucks that he's gotten demoted all the way to the third line now because I've always remembered him as first or second
I
line.
kind of forgot he was still playing, honestly.
He's gotten very
Travis
old.
Zajac?
Yeah, he's gotten very old. I mean, he and it was him. The trio for that team, like back in the day, was always Patrick Eliash, Travis Zajac, and Zach Parise.
Yeah,
it was a big trio back then. So Travis Zajac is the only one still left. So
that's true.
He's getting old.
Who do they have for goaltenders?
They have Corey Schneider, which is going to be I think the issue for this season.
Sure,
is the goaltending.
That'll be their
team.
weakness.
It's Corey Schneider, and Corey Schneider had a very, very hard time last season. He barely got any time because he had an injury for most of the season, but then then he went to the minors for the AHL, and then when he was called up into the NHL for the Devils, started a few games, he did so bad that they called him back to the minors. So,
jeez,
and they put in instead the new up and comer, which I think can be the starting goaltender, is Mackenzie Blackwood. And I would actually know this because both of these goalies were my fantasy goaltenders last season, actually. So I would always have both of those guys plus Keith Kincaid every time the Devils would play a game, and I would be like, all right, who's starting now? Because I had no idea, had no clue. Nobody had any clue which Devils goaltender was going to start at any day. So that was the big issue. But when Mackenzie Blackwood honestly would go in, he did a great job, and he finished the season with the .91.8 save percentage. So that's actually not bad amongst top goaltenders as well.
So uncertainty in goaltending.
Yeah, that's the
only
only
be the problem with
uncertainty. It's
the Devils.
Yeah, the goaltending for sure.
Because it looks like they have their skaters mostly figured out, or so it seems.
Correct.
As long as the injury bug doesn't hit them.
Plus, like I was gonna say, even their fourth line with Pavel Zacha and Miles Wood, they have great depth in their forwards and their defense. So having their defense and their forward lines is definitely not going to be a problem. I think defensively they could definitely improve on last season, but it's going to be ultimately the goaltending that's going to be the ultimate issue.
Yep.
Now, this is also a thing because Corey Schneider has a lot to prove. I'm pretty sure the Devils gave him a huge contract because they wanted him to be the starter in the first place. So Corey Schneider is going to have a prove-it year if he even wants to stay on this team.
Corey Schneider's going to need to have a big rebound year.
Yeah, and plus, it's bad for the Devils too because it's like you pay so much money for a starting goaltender like this, and he's not proving to yourself as a starting goaltender. So that's going to be a huge issue for them as well if they don't find a way to get his game back in as well.
Yep. All right. Who's next in the Metropolitan? 7th place in the Metro were the Rangers.
The Rangers.
The New York Rangers.
So the Rangers. They made a few changes. They got a different amounts of defensemen. They got some. I think they got one big name, and I wanted to see.
They got Panarin, didn't they?
Yeah, they got Panarin.
Yes.
There we go, Panarin, and they also got Jacob Trouba. There's the guy, Jacob Trouba from Winnipeg, and getting Panarin is huge.
And Jimmy Vesey, they traded him.
Yes,
correct?
they did trade Jimmy Vesey.
Where did he go? I can't remember.
Oh man, I don't remember either.
I got nothing.
Wow, that's actually very bad. I should know that because
I remember he was a big name with where he would sign and stuff, and
he was a big.
Oh, he went to Buffalo.
See, yeah, okay. So Buffalo is going to be a different story. But anyway, the New York Rangers they kind of got a better player. It's up for debate how well Panarin's going to be compared to Jimmy Vesey because we've seen Panarin go all the way up when he was with Columbus sometime for that last season, but then he also had a down season 2 seasons ago when he was with Columbus. So we're not exactly sure which Panarin we're getting when he's going to the Rangers this season.
Yeah,
and at the same time, Jacob Trouba's a very good person to have for defense. Instead, you get in place of that, you get rid of Kevin Shattenkirk and Neil Pionk. So it's tough for Jacob Trouba to fill in those two shoes. But they also did get Adam Fox from Carolina, and he was good with the Charlotte Checkers and the AHL. So they were in Carolina, I believe, was about to plug him into the third line. So getting him is a good depth for the New York Rangers, who are still trying to find their identity, I guess we could say, for their team because they still haven't found one yet. But it's good for them to develop as well, so that they can compete against the teams in the Metropolitan.
Yep. Speaking of the Rangers. kind of have to feel bad for Henrik Lundqvist. He has had stellar seasons throughout his career and has just not...
The team just can't...
He just has not had a consistent team behind him.
He hasn't.
He is arguably one of the best players to not win a Stanley Cup.
And it's even more sad to think about because he's also getting older.
He is, yes. He is nearing retirement. Retirement is just around the corner.
Just around the corner, and exactly. And he at this point, it was really kind of a big issue coming into this offseason, whether Lundqvist was going to be all in or all out for this rebuild. And he said he was all in, so that's really good to see. Because for all intents and purposes, he could have honestly went to a different team, a winning team, if he wanted to. But he wants to stay with his hometown Rangers, so that's also good for him.
I think he just has that loyalty to the Rangers. I could probably see him going, a couple more years and then
it'll be
hanging
interesting.
it up, depending on how the Rangers do this next season and the one after. Because I don't know, it's...
Yeah, the expectations for the Rangers is going to be a little bit different this season. The Metropolitan isn't as competitive of a division as the other ones are. However, the Rangers can make a statement, but at the same time, they also still have a very young group of guys that really need to be able to prove it this year. But looking at the roster right now, I'm not exactly sure if it is playoff bound yet. They will probably make it close because right now I believe their only big guys right now is being Panarin, Buchnevich, and Zibanejad, along with Chris Kreider. And that's your entire first line is Zibanejad, Panarin, and Buchnevich. And then Chris Kreider is on your second line. Then you have Nemestikov on the third, and even Brett Howden in the fourth line. So they're not really star-studded players just yet, but if they can still make a statement this season and try to see where they can go after that. So now, going away from that, the Rangers, they are kind of playoff bound, but I think the Devils actually kind of have a better chance of making the playoffs.
I think the Devils have the leg up on the Rangers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking a little bit more stronger.
For sure.
In sixth place for the Metro last season, the Philadelphia Flyers.
Okay, Philadelphia is an interesting story. They are finished completely even, 37-37, then having an 8 loss in shootouts and overtime. They had a lot of arrivals. First of all, they got a new head coach, and Alain Vigneault. Kevin Hayes, and actually Alain Vigneault, I should say, was the coach that took the Rangers to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2015.
He took Vancouver to the Stanley Cup Finals in
against Boston.
Yeah, that would have been 2011.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he's a good coach in the playoffs for sure because he can take your team all the way there.
Yep.
But he's starting with a team that's kind of fresh off of missing the playoffs again and still trying to find their way into this season as well.
Yeah.
Besides him, they also got Kevin Hayes, Matt Niskanen, Justin Braun, and Tyler Pitlick. But they lost Radko Gudas, Ryan Hartman, Cam Talbot, and Andrew McDonald. So Matt Niskanen, kind of a veteran guy, so he's going to be a good presence in the locker room for them. Kevin Hayes is a good second to third liner, so they can have more depth there. And then Tyler Pitlick is also a good depth guy in third and fourth lines. So they're kind of just going for depth at this point, but they're not making too many big splashes yet for me to say that they're playoff bound yet.
You know what I think their big addition was last season?
Gritty.
Gritty, I think,
What a man.
is the secret sauce that is going to lead Philadelphia to playoff glory.
I love him so much. He's there's no mascot that will ever be like Gritty.
Just using his grittiness. I don't even know how to describe him.
There is no way to
just
describe
using
him.
his...
What even is he? Is he like an animal or something? Or like I
have no idea.
He's an anomaly. I love it.
Apparently there's a Gritty 5K that's going on.
I'm not surprised.
Oh my gosh,
I am not
of course.
surprised even.
Of course. According to Gritty's official biography, he emerged after construction at the Wells Fargo Center because it disturbed his secret hideout.
What?
So now he's here and just traumatizing children everywhere.
That is so funny.
I feel like out of all the
great.
mascots, he's the scariest looking.
He was voted by the Players Association #1 mascot in the league.
I'm not surprised.
in his first
that's
season.
not a surprise. Like, what better
pretty
mascot
cool.
is there, honestly?
Yeah, for hockey mascots, probably not.
I mean, like, he's like the first NHL mascot that like I've actually like realized that he's actually like that there's mascots in the NHL even.
He's like
honestly,
he's like the Philly fanatic of the NHL.
he is.
Yeah.
And it's great that they're both from the same city.
But he's amazing that the fact that he just brings so much love to the city because
does.
Philadelphia and he kind of.
I think
it after.
it's helped to kind of turn the team culture and fan culture
That is true.
around.
That is
And I
true.
think it doesn't get recognized a lot how much a mascot can do, but I think Philly's kind of a city where you've definitely seen that a little bit more than others.
Correct.
All right, moving up in the standings, number 5, the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Now, this is going to be a hot take on this, but I don't think the Columbus Blue Jackets make the playoffs again.
I mean, you lose Bobrovsky, you lose.
They lost a
Panarin.
lot.
You lose Bobrovsky, and you don't have a goalie.
No.
Their backup goalie is Jonas Carpasalo.
Yeah.
I don't think
I've
many
never
people
heard that name before.
Yeah.
I've heard of it. I just don't know anything about him.
Corpusalo was just their backup. I mean, he didn't really.
Did he ever play?
He did. I did
Very
have him.
rarely.
I had him. I actually had both their goaltenders in fantasy as well. He was okay. His career save percentage right now is just above 90 at
Okay.
points 97.
We should point out that Columbus was the team that knocked out Tampa Bay in 4 games last postseason, but they are not the same team as they were last season.
They
though.
are not. They
So
will,
Jake, you don't need to be that scared this season.
No, like I will say that they did definitely shock the hockey world last season.
They definitely did. Yes.
And it was just amazing to see that.
Yep.
But losing your starting goaltender, losing Artemi Panarin,
Yeah.
I think losing Matt Duchene too is huge too.
Oh yeah, they lost Matt
They
Duchene too.
Matt Duchene.
He
They
went
lost
to Nashville.
They
correct?
lost Ryan
Nashville,
DeZingle.
yeah.
They lost
Nashville.
Ryan DeZingle too. Like they lost 3 key pieces and only brought in Gustav Nyquist.
I think this is going to be a rebuilding year for them
I think yeah,
because I think they
I
desperately
feel,
need it.
yeah, like a semi rebuild. I want to say like a full rebuild,
Not
but
full rebuild.
until they find like their starting goaltender, which most Columbus Blue Jackets will say this is going to be a new goaltender name too, is Elvis. And I'm going to really botch this last name. Merzlikins. There we go.
Spot on.
So Elvis Merzlikins. I actually got to find out where his nationality is because that's actually kind of a cool last name. And so he's a young guy, born in 1994, 2014 pick for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So he played in Latvia and Finland. He's a very big international guy. So, but apparently Columbus really loves him, and he is apparently going to be their grooming starter that they want to start. So
Hopefully, because there are a lot of pieces of the puzzle that need to come together in Columbus.
But either way,
kind of return to playoff.
Either way,
form
this
that they
season,
were last season.
Yeah, for sure. Either way, this season they still have to, stick with Korpisalo for a good hot minute until he starts doing bad, and maybe they give Merzlikins some time on the ice to maybe start. So
there you go.
Until then,
it'll be interesting.
It will be interesting because right now their entire forward line too is just kind of weird. I mean, their best guy is Cam Atkinson, and Pierre-Luc Dubois. Gustav Nyquist is already on the first line, so they have to really find a way to get away from that.
Yep. Lots of questions to be answered. I think we'll go to a quick break, play some music, come back with the remaining 4 teams in the Metropolitan Division, give our takes on the rest of them. We'll be back with more Dump and Chase here on 88.1 FM, WLRA, The Start. Welcome back, everyone, to the Dump and Chase podcast here on 88.1 WLRA, The Start. Lewis University, Romeoville, Illinois. Reid, Jake, and Rebecca in the studio with you today, going over the Metropolitan Division in the NHL. We just went through the last 4 teams in the standings last year. And we're starting off now this segment with the 4th place team, which were the Carolina Hurricanes.
So the Carolina Hurricanes are, the biggest thing that they got back was Sebastian Aho.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little bit close there for a second because the Montreal Canadiens were like,
"Oh yeah,
we have an offer sheet."
Because they gave the offer, and then
Carolina's were like,
it.
"Nah, you ain't getting our guy. We're gonna match that easily." So they have him as now the highest paid player on their team, with a cap of $8.4 million on his contract. So That's
a lot
great
of
for
money.
them. That is
I
a lot
wish
of
I
money.
had that.
Don't we all? Don't we all? So he's their highest paid player, and second to him is actually Jordan Stahl. And
Jordan Stahl
Jordan
is their
Stahl.
second highest paid player.
Yes,
Wow.
$6 million. cap
Carolina,
Yikes.
what are you doing?
And get this, he's signed until 2022 to 2023.
Holy crap.
So
When was his last good year? Like
I
2009?
have no Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
Damn, I forgot that. When was the last time that the Stahl brothers were relevant?
Oh well, Eric Stahl was relevant when he was in Minnesota.
Dang, he's just.
Isn't he still in
Yeah, he's
Minnesota?
still in Minnesota.
And then Mark Stahl's still with the Rangers.
That's true. Mark Stahl
Wow.
is still with the Rangers.
There's 3 Stahl
And then-
brothers or are there
no, there's
4?
You didn't know that there was
The
4.
fourth one, I want to say in like the KHL. He's not in the
Who's
NHL.
the 4th one?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it started with a J.
Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah, there's 4 Stahl brothers. One of them which is a
There's a
defenseman for the
4th one?
Rangers. So I mean,
Jared Stahl.
Jared Stahl.
Yep.
I feel like he played in the NHL for a little bit.
Yeah, he was with the Hurricanes.
Oh my gosh, of course.
Yeah.
No,
So
of course.
3 of them
Oh,
played
yeah,
for the
that's right.
Hurricanes. Eric, Jordan, and Jared all played for the Hurricanes.
And Eric is obviously
And
the
Mark's
most
the
well known.
oddball.
Yeah.
And Mark's the oddball because he's a defenseman. So
That is
Sure.
that's also true.
Yeah.
unfortunately, defensemen just don't get as much,
They don't get as much love.
Yeah, unless you're a Niedermeyer.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Niedermeyer. But yeah, he's their second highest paid player, and guess who the third guy is? Dougie Hamilton.
Dougie Hamilton.
Of all players, they
That
could
was going to be another Stahl brother.
like it's not Timo Teravainen, it's not Niederreiter, it's not even Ryan Dzingel,
Dang.
it's not even Justin Falk. It's Dougie Hamilton.
Dougie Hamilton is loving life right now.
$5.7 million, and he's signed for 2 more years.
Wow.
So
Nice.
they're good on cap space too. They're still got $2 million in their cap space, so it's decent.
Carolina last season advanced to the Eastern Conference Final, where they were swept by the Boston Bruins. Can we just talk about how odd the playoffs were last season real quick?
Okay, yeah.
With every
So-
round, there was somebody getting swept.
So this is weird. Okay. So first round, Islanders sweep Florida. Then the next round, Carolina sweeps the Islanders.
Wait, Florida was in the playoffs?
Did I say Florida?
He's in
Yeah.
the
Wow. Oh my gosh. Pittsburgh. Words are hard. The Islanders sweep the Penguins. Then Carolina sweeps the Islanders, and then Boston sweeps Carolina.
And then Blue Jackets
Like,
also sweep the Lightning.
What is happening? Blue Jackets sweep the Lightning. We can't forget about that.
So
Can't let Jake forget that.
Yeah, exactly.
you'll never see me forget that.
The-
I can't even forget the Eastern Conference Final with the Boston Bruins in 2012.
The
so.
East was just an absolute roller coaster. The whole playoffs were, honestly. 'Cause
It was honestly like the best playoffs I've ever seen.
it was
Aside
so,
from the Lightning
It was
losing,
they were so
bizarre.
wacky.
but like it was just also the most exciting because I love seeing upsets. Everybody likes seeing the underdog win.
Yeah.
But like this year was just the first seeds got all out in the first
I
round.
would say there were 4 upsets. Well, there were a total of let me do math real quick. 5 upsets. The higher seed only won 3 series in the first round.
And I believe
Second round, only 1 higher seed won, and then after that, it was all higher seeds except for the Cup final.
yeah. And then the Stanley Cup winning team, being the St. Louis Blues, also were the 3rd team in the Central.
Yep.
So
Weird.
it feels like the Stanley Cup champion of any year always has to like never be first or second. They always have to be like either 3rd or a wild card team or somewhere around there.
It just shows you that if you get hot at the right time and everything's clicking when you hit the postseason, you can, because that's really what happened with St. Louis. Everything just started to click at the right time. You know, ever since that turnaround at the start of the new year, everything just clicked and there was no turning back. You know, that could have happened to any team.
And that was a big reason for that was Jordan Binnington. I mean,
Yes.
Jake Allen was terrible. Everybody thought Jake Allen was going to be like the big starter for that year, and he was it was so bad.
We'll talk a little bit more about the Blues
Yeah.
when we get to the
when we get to the
Central
Central.
Division. Let's move up to the 3rd team to finish the Metropolitan with a record of 44, 26, and 12 and 100 points, the Pittsburgh Penguins, who got swept by the New York Islanders.
Oof.
And then the Islanders,
Big oof.
which is funny because the Islanders couldn't score.
And then the
that
Islanders
season.
got swept.
And then the Islanders got swept.
Just the absolute mess of that part of the bracket.
Goodness gracious.
Anyway, Pittsburgh Penguins coming in third.
So two big losses that the Pittsburgh Penguins got this offseason was losing Phil Kessel and losing Ole Mata.
Phil the Thrill. Went
Phil the
to
Thrill.
Arizona, right?
Yep, went to Arizona.
Trying to chase his cup dreams with
Arizona.
the Coyotes. Have some more
'Cause
hot dogs out of the cup.
They're building a nice playoff team over there. And
Okay, whoa. They think they are. Okay, let's not get too
there
excited
is
about Arizona.
no way that they aren't going to make the playoffs, at least either this season or the next
someone
season.
needs to write this down or take
This
a
is
note
my
of this.
hottest take.
Well, we're
This is
recording this,
This
so
is
we'll
my
This is
go
hottest
true.
back
take
and
This
right
is Jake's
now.
hot
Is
take.
the Coyotes
Coyotes are going to the
will
playoffs.
go to the playoffs. There's no way. We'll talk about the roster when we get there.
Okay,
but
we can't say there's no way when they were just very mediocre last year.
Yeah, but you see the additions they had this season.
Okay, so they
plus
have Phil
their draft,
Kessel.
plus Phil Kessel.
Who else did they all get?
Well, I don't have it with me right now because
Got
we're
it.
not covering them. But we'll get there when we get there.
That's true. That's true.
I know that there was a lot of other big names.
And
that they
anyway,
got too.
Pittsburgh lost Phil the Thrill.
They've lost Phil the Thrill. They lost Ole Mata, which
Yeah.
is a good defenseman as well, and Matt Cullen. But I mean, Matt Cullen was like, he was
100
just,
years old.
he's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
he's like 100 years old, but it was fine. It was finally time to let him go. But,
Yeah.
But in spite of that, they got Galchenyuk and Brandon Tanev. I'm not sure what Brandon Tanev will bring to the table for the Penguins, but I do like Alex Galchenyuk coming from the Coyotes. He can be kind of filling in the projected lineup. He's actually projected to be on the second line with Evgeny Malkin. So that could be and Patrick Hornquist. So actually, that could be a good chemistry too.
Yeah.
But then you have Jake Gensel with Sidney Crosby on the first line, which is kind of amazing because he and Jared McCann are on the first line with Sidney Crosby, which is
That's interesting.
that's really you would think Patrick Hornquist would actually be more of a guy to be on the first line, but Jared McCann and Gensel are the first line with Crosby. Nick Bukestad would be their starting third center, and then Brian Russell with him. And then Tanev will be the plug-in for the fourth line. So the first two lines, they look pretty well, but then the last two lines for the Penguins, they just need depth.
Yeah.
So that's going to be their biggest problem is just finding the depth. I think for this season, because of the Pittsburgh Penguins, because they score a lot, they'll still find a way to make the playoffs, find a way to be in the Metropolitan.
Yeah.
They won't win the division. They won't be. I don't think they might even be top 3, but they'll get it because they're the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah.
So
I think their goaltending is an interesting situation too. 'Cause you had Matt Murray, who the 2 years they won the Stanley Cup looked absolutely bulletproof,
correct.
and now he is definitely looking. He's looking more human.
Yeah, he's looking a little bit more mistaking
Yes.
of a goaltender. So, but they also have a good backup goaltender, which mine's not coming into me, but he's
Casey DeSmith.
Yes, Casey DeSmith. There we go. So he's a pretty good, reliable backup goaltender as well.
Yeah.
So even with Matt Murray's not doing well, they can rely on Casey DeSmith.
Yeah, because looking at DeSmith's numbers from last season, he played in. He started 30 games compared to Murray's
36 games actually too.
Played
so that's
in-
actually a lot.
Played in 36.
Yeah.
Started 30, but he
Started
was holding a goals against and a save percentage just shy of Matt Murray's.
Yeah, and a save percentage of .916 for Casey DeSmith is really good.
Whereas Murray is .919.
Right, and
So
that's
not
as
far
bad.
off.
Not too far off either.
Not
so
too far off.
as long as their goalies are solid from game in, they don't have to be spectacular, but they also just can't be terrible.
Yep.
Like with the Blues situations. So they just have to be solid so that their offense can score because the Pittsburgh Penguins are a scoring team. We all know that.
I agree.
So as long as they can do that, they'll get into the playoffs, no problem.
Yep. All right. Second place in the Metropolitan Division. Record 48, 27, and 7, 103 points, just one shy of being first in the division, were the New York Islanders under their new leadership last season of Barry Trotz. That was big for them last season, getting Trotz coming from the Stanley Cup winning Capitals, and everyone, predicted before the beginning of the season that he was going to bring this team to their peak, or not, I shouldn't say their peak, but definitely help them out a lot, and
they got into the playoffs.
I think the numbers don't lie.
Yeah, they don't.
You know,
the
they
results
performed
don't lie
well.
either.
They knocked off Pittsburgh in 4 games, like we said, first round. Had a rocky second round, got swept by Carolina, but those are the playoffs. That's the nature of them.
Yep.
Can be up and down, but I think there's a lot of promise on this team, considering that there wasn't when Tavares left, I think there was a lot of questions about what they would be like, and then they got Trotz, and
there was, but then there was also hope because Anders Lee was really good that season when John Tavares' last season.
yes,
And Anders Lee was just a huge hope for this franchise when he started to rise up. And then when John Tavares left, everyone was like, okay, now it's just going to be Anders Lee and Matt Barzal, their team basically.
Yep.
So now it's going to be Anders Lee. He's their highest paid player, so there's no question he's their franchise guy right now, and Barry Trotz knows that. But also I feel like they have to do something else besides what they did last season, because they really didn't do many offseason things. They only got Semyon Varlamov because they lost Robin Lehner. And they also got rid of Filppula to the Red Wings.
Where did Lehner go to? He went
Blackhawks.
He went to the Blackhawks. That's right.
So you're getting a goaltender in Varlamov who we know won't start more than 60 games.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to be healthy, or he's already getting old.
I would say he's getting older too.
And so they have to give more time to Thomas Greiss.
Yep.
Which he did pretty well as a backup goaltender for Robin Lehner. But at the same time, can you keep Thomas Greiss in that backup role, and can he perform as well as he did last year? And can Varlamov still be that goaltender that we once knew when he was really good with Colorado, probably 3 seasons ago?
Returning to his glory years. Yeah.
Exactly. So the goaltending is still a little bit of a question, because Robin Lehner, I feel like, was a really good starter for them, and he was one of the best goaltenders in the Eastern Conference that year. So losing him was big, I think. Valtteri Filppula, that's a veteran guy. I think that isn't as much of a problem. It does give them less depth, though, especially because they have to really change up their fourth line now. And Tom Kunako, Tanner Fritz, and Leo Komarov are their fourth line. So not big-name guys, and then they're relying at this point on their first line with Anders Lee and Matt Barzal.
Yeah.
So they have to do something this season to really wow the competition.
Yeah.
But I feel that won't be enough this season. Because of that, I feel like they won't make the playoffs.
This is a season where they need to solidify themselves as a playoff team.
Correct.
And looking at what they have, I don't really see that happening. I think they're either going to just barely make the playoffs, or they'll be on the outside looking in.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was going to say. It's just, I think they're going to scratch and claw their way into the playoffs.
Yes.
But I don't think they're going to be just outside of it.
Yep.
Just outside of it.
Yep. All right. And the last team, finishing first in the Metropolitan Division, the defending champions at the start of last season, the Washington Capitals, finished with a record of 48, 26, and 8, 104 points to claim the Metropolitan Division title. But then they lost in a 7-game series to Carolina.
Yeah, and it was a hard one, but at the same time, the Capitals know it's the playoffs. Sometimes you take hard losses, and that's the great nature of the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's just anything can happen.
That was
Any team can win.
Heartbreaker of a Game 7, though.
But
double overtime,
and guess who scores? Justin Williams. And if you ever see the replay of that goal, he was just on the boards and just decided to turn around and shoot the puck, and it just somehow went past Holtby out of nowhere.
Looking back in the series that they had, interesting games. Washington comes out, wins the first 2, 4-2 in Game 1, 4-3 overtime win in Game 2. And then Game 3, Carolina just decides to wake up, wins 5-0. Then they take Game 4, 2-1. Okay, so now we're back even. Then Washington decides to wake back up, wins Game 5, 6-0. Then Carolina comes back, wins Game 6, 5-2. So it was just an absolute roller coaster of a series. And I think for a long time, no one really had any idea which way that series would go, especially as it got longer. It was just really, it was really up for grabs, because both teams it was just so up and down. But then that last game was was kind of the one to put the nail in the coffin for Washington. And
Correct.
I don't know. It was a crazy series, just like the playoffs last year. We've talked about it before. Crazy playoffs. I don't know.
A lot of yelling in the radio station.
Oh man, yeah. There were some intense games. Yeah.
There were a lot of things thrown.
Yeah, but looking at
including some very bad penalty calls.
Looking at Washington. Oh yeah, we'll get to
we'll get to that when we talk about Vegas.
We'll get to we will talk about that. Yeah, we will rant about
Reid's
that.
hot takes.
But looking at Washington, Jake, what kind of offseason moves are they working with? Obviously, they still have Ovechkin, they still have Braden Holtby. They're gonna have the key components to the team.
They will, but what they really changed this offseason is a lot of depth. Aside from the first and second line, they really changed up how they want to look as a forward and defensive line for their later lines. So I feel that they really made these changes as a change of identity, because the Capitals were always known as a scoring first machine with Ovechkin and all the lines. But then we found out that they're really not as good as defending as we know them to be, and that's really is what a problem was for them during the playoffs that they failed in, is because their defense couldn't keep the pucks coming out of their net. So they really changed a lot. First, they bring in Radko Gudas, give him a more physical defense. And then they bring in Richard Panik as more forward depth. They bring in Garnett Hathaway as another depth defenseman as a third and fourth line, and then Brendan Leipzig as another third and fourth line.
Yeah.
But here's the big names that they lost. They lost Andrei Burakovsky to Colorado.
Okay.
So that's huge. They lost Brett Connolly. They lost Brooks Orpik, and they lost Matt Niskanen. Matt Niskanen obviously going to Philadelphia. But Brooks Orpik also.
Where did Brooks Orpik go?
Brooks Orpik retired.
He retired. Okay, got it. That's right.
So
I remember hearing about that now. Okay.
Brooks Orpik had a great career, and I think that was a really good year for him and a good place for him to retire.
Yeah.
And then losing Devontae Smith-Pelly was also huge.
Where did Smith-Pelly go?
I think he went to Vegas, didn't he?
Maybe.
Maybe. I have no clue.
I don't think
forgot.
So. Where did Smith-Pelly go to? He's an unrestricted free agent.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Wow.
He hasn't been signed. Interesting,
because he was usually a fourth liner for them.
He played well in their 2018 Cup run, too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, too. So maybe they found that this season was just not for him or something.
Who knows?
But yeah, losing Brett Connolly, Andrei Burakovsky, Matt Niskanen, and Brooks Orpik. Brooks Orpik and Matt Niskanen were really like the big... It's kind of funny. Those two guys were known in Pittsburgh during the 2009 season and the early 2010 season. They won the Stanley Cup with Pittsburgh in 2009.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, let's go to our rival team, the Washington Capitals, and let's both play on the same team and win another cup.
Yep.
On the same team.
And they did.
And then one retires and then one goes to Philadelphia, which, of course, he also played in Philadelphia. So, so having that, those two veteran guys are gone, but then having Richard Panik come in as a depth guy and Radko Gudas to give him more physical presence is also good.
Yeah.
Now, there is one situation that I should address, looking at their cap space, actually, for this season, is that they are actually $1 million over the cap currently.
That's a problem.
That is a problem. So they have to do some kind of contract negotiations or something by the end of this season, by the beginning of the season, I mean, so that they can be under that cap space. But right now they have a lot of paid players. Alex Ovechkin obviously being the number one guy, $9.5 million. You got Kuznetsov at $7.8, Backstrom at $6.7, and even John Carlson at $8 million too. So they have to really find a way to free up their cap space before the end of the season.
They will.
Playoffs, I think Washington Capitals, being the team that they are, even with these changes, I think they will still make it to the playoffs. Yeah. Not exactly sure if they'll dominate the division, but I think they'll still be second or third in that division.
All right. Speaking of that, to wrap it up, we've gone through all the teams. Let's do our picks for who rises, who falls, and who's our division winner. Patricia, Rebecca, you want to start?
Oh, I gotta think about this a little more.
So looking at the standings, Devils, I think, are the riser.
Jake, you can start too.
The Devils, I think, are the biggest changing team. I think they're going to be the ones on the rise. I don't think they're going to finish last. I think they're going to finish. I think they're going to be in the wild card. Rangers won't make the playoffs. Flyers won't make the playoffs.
I don't think the Jackets are going to make the playoffs either.
So Blue Jackets won't make the playoffs. I don't think the Metropolitan will have 5 teams in the playoffs get in. I think the wild cards are going to be more set for the Atlantic Division.
I agree.
So I think the Metropolitan won't have the Flyers, the Rangers, the Blue Jackets. It's Carolina. It's going to be, I think the first place is going to be Carolina. Carolina's going to be first place.
That's a hot take.
I know it's a hot take, but at the same time, I feel that the Penguins, they didn't get better from what they were last season, but they will still make the playoffs because they're the Penguins. The Capitals will still make the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to lead the division because I don't think they got better either. Islanders' goaltending is an issue, so I don't think they're going to be leading in the division either. I think Carolina's still very solid, and they are, the solid team that they didn't really make too many changes that made them worse.
Yeah.
So I think they'll be first. I think the Capitals will be second. The Devils will be third. Penguins will be in the wild card. And I think the Islanders will be out.
Then everyone else will be out.
And then everybody else will
I
be
think
out. So.
Team on the rise, the Devils. Team on the fall, the Blue Jackets. And I'm going to say that the Capitals hold on for the division for another year. Rebecca?
Yeah, I think I'm going to give the Capitals one more year. To stay in, the top position. For sure, the Jackets are going to have a rough season with all their losses. And I can honestly see the Devils having a pretty good season.
Yeah.
Especially with having Taylor Hall back. That's going to be huge.
As long as he doesn't get injured.
Yeah.
As long as they avoid the injuries.
Barring a miracle for any of these teams that injuries don't happen, that's going to be how it's going to look. But, of course, injuries happen all the time in hockey. So who knows who's going to get hurt.
Never really know.
Never really know.
Well, I think that concludes the first episode of Dump and Chase. That's the name. Yep, I have to remember that. Subject change. Who knows? We'll see where this goes, what leads to it. Next week on Tuesdays from noon to 2 or 1:30 about.
1:30
We'll have to see.
Yeah.
Depending on how much we have to talk about.
That's true.
We're going to be going over the Atlantic Division, I believe. Yep, we'll be rounding out the other half of the Eastern Conference. And then as the season gets closer, we'll move to the West, go through the 2 divisions over there. Then eventually we'll give our full predictions for the whole league. And
then when the season starts, we'll be getting into more of the real stuff when the
more
season
real
starts.
games. Yep.
Injuries, stuff like that. Even fantasy, because we're starting a fantasy league too, so we can talk about some fantasy stuff too as well.
Touch on a little bit of that. Yeah. So that's it. That is the first episode.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you for listening. Yep. Tune in next week, Tuesdays, from noon to 2 on 88.1 FM, WLRA The Start, the official radio station of Lewis University. I'm Reed Poland, and for Rebecca and Jake, have a good one.